Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Born Free here. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I want to hit 1,000 to make more videos. So last video I did was about Street Fighter statues from around the world. I'm going to talk to you about Street Fighter 5 and a couple of characters that I think will be in Street Fighter 5, because a lot of other people came to the same conclusions as me after watching my last video. There's a couple of things you should know if you don't already know this. Obviously, with Capcom, there are a bunch of people in the know, merchandisers, people who work with them and produce stuff in relation to Street Fighter 5. They have to know the character roster, otherwise they won't be able to help. They won't be able to produce the goods in order to release at the same time as Street Fighter 5. So, you know, there are going to be companies who produce statues, there are going to be companies who produce figures, there are going to be companies who produce collector's editions, anything. Watches through to sticks. You know, Mad Cats I'm sure are in and know what artwork they should be producing specifically for the launch of Street Fighter 5, right? So there's a whole bunch of people, merchandisers, who know. And what's interesting is to just kind of look at them and see what characters they've produced and potentially what characters maybe, you know, Capcom has approved because they know. Right? They know, like, yeah, that character is actually going to be in Street Fighter 5, so yeah, you can make that character, that sounds good. So the other thing you should know is that Ono, I know this from various sources, Ono is only really interested in approving characters that are either in his game or going to be in his games. He's not so interested in past characters, so if you said, I want to make a statue of Retsu from Street Fighter 1, he'd be like, no. Or 12 from Street Fighter 3, again, no. But if you make a character that he's either in Street Fighter 4 or is going to be in his game, then he'll be like, yes. So the best example of that is, I want to use this as a proof, as sort of like a proof point, a logic point, is Charlie, right? So Charlie was produced by Kid Robot, and Kid Robot produced 2 series of Street Fighter characters with some exclusives. And Charlie was the only character featured in both series who wasn't in Street Fighter 4. No one batted an eyelid because Street Fighter 4 is basically made up of lots of characters from older games and what have you. So when you see some of those characters like Gen, you're not necessarily thinking, you know, like these are all Street Fighter 4 characters. You're just thinking, no, it's Gen. You know, I've seen him in other Street Fighter games. But now that we know, it's very interesting to go backwards and take the timeline back, because I want to know, when did they know Charlie was going to be central to the game, and when did they know the rough roster? So this is me going backwards, and then once I've gone backwards, I can look at what statues have been produced since that time and wonder, will they be in Street Fighter 5? So Charlie was revealed December 13th, 2014. He was also in a cryptic tweet by Ono, September 9th, 2014. Kid Robot released him August 29th, 2013, and which means they probably started design on him a year before that, because they work with China, and there's so much involved. I'm not going to go into that. So we're talking like late 2012. So I'm thinking mid-2012 is a good date for when Capcom knew that Charlie was going to be central to the story. They probably had that approved, must have had it approved before they started production on the Kid Robot stuff, right? Or gave Kid Robot instructions to make Charlie. They probably knew roughly the characters at that time, if not had them actually approved. You know, these things are planned way in advance, much more than, if you haven't worked in a corporate company, trust me, these things are planned way in advance. And if you're Capcom, unless you're complete idiots, with the success of Street Fighter 4, you should already have been starting to think about Street Fighter 5 like 2 weeks after the success of Street Fighter 4, which was back in 2009. So mid-2012 is a good date, I think, for to imagine that they sort of had the storyline and the characters locked down, and potentially other things as well. So what's interesting is to look around and say, well, what characters have been produced? For me, you know, I'm the statue guy, right? So what characters have been produced that aren't in Street Fighter 4? So there's 2 characters that have been produced that aren't in Street Fighter 4. One of them is Alex. Big surprise, right? Not really. Obviously, we have seen the signboards in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. We've seen, I believe the signboards are also in, I'll have to look it up, but I think they're in Street Fighter 4 as well. I'll be back. Alex. So the other thing to back it up is that there is a statue of Alex, right? And it was done by Pop Culture Shock Collectibles. And let me see if I can get the dates for that. The first prototype pictures were shown in October 2012. So that is in line with our timeline of them already knowing shit mid 2012 or having the cast approved mid 2012. The other interesting thing about Alex is they changed the design on his costume. So normally his costume has I forget what you call them. His overalls normally have like a front and a back, and they tweaked it, right? And we as statue collectors were like, we don't get it, like, because we had no idea about Street Fighter 5. We were just like, you're gonna change the costume on a statue. Why? For the hell of it? Like, who does that? Like, the whole point is the statue should be exactly as the game is, right? And there was no other statue where they tweaked something so significantly. And what they did was they took off the back half of his dungarees, or whatever the hell you call that costume, so that, and I'll show you a photo, but it's just the back is missing, and so it's a slightly different style. That got a few of us thinking at the time, why would you do that? The only reason you would do that is if you actually were tweaking it for a future game, right? So no big surprise in Alex. So I expect Alex to be in Street Fighter 5, and that's just more evidence of the fact that he'll probably be in Street Fighter 5. Now, this is really what the video comes down to. There's one other character, right, that got released, and that is Oro. Now, Oro was released late, right? Really late, compared to like Alex. So Oro was teased mid 2014. Right, I know from various sources that they'd already started production on Street Fighter 5, got official approval to start some like real production in terms of producing the game mid 2013, which would make sense based on the timing of when this game is going to be released. So they were well into production, and Pop Culture Shock, for all I know, Pop Culture Shock could have just said, we want to make Oro, and Capcom said, okay. But it's the okay, which is interesting, right? Because it's like, the statue is not going to be released until like next year, okay, at the best. It's going to be right in the throes of Street Fighter, and it, the Pop Culture Shock line, the statues that they make are sort of like the number one Street Fighter statues out there, right? Ono has them in his office, and you see them everywhere. You see them on Capcom UK. You see them everywhere, right? So they're top of the line statues. So they're making Oro, right? So yes, could that have been like a fluke? Could it have just been like, okay, fine, you really want to make Oro, you go ahead and make Oro. That's fine, and that could be true, but I've not seen that to be true for any other character. Every other character for Street Fighter at Pop Culture Shock Collectibles, at any other Street Fighter statue company, Connecticut, Prototype Studios, you name it, even the figures as well, you don't see a character like Oro. So it just makes me think, and it made a lot of other people think, that potentially Oro is going to be in the game, and I think that would be pretty cool. He's like a very interesting character. I forget how old he is. He's like 120 years old or something. He fights with one arm tied behind his back, because if he fought with two arms, that would be unfair for the opponent. I forget what I think he had a run-in with Akuma, actually. Sorry, people who know the story, please comment below, but I think he had a run-in with Akuma. I'm not sure if either of one of them actually won. He's an extremely powerful character. He's a unique character. He's an interesting character, and I would welcome him in Street Fighter 5. So yeah, I mean, that's it basically. So I think Alex for sure, Oro potentially. I gotta stop because this video is going to be way too long. So thank you and goodbye.